What's up, everybody? Coming up, we needed a little something this summer, an injection of news into this, what has been a quiet summer for the Celtics. Well, Jeff Goodman provided it. One of his debut stories over at The Messenger, talking to Tatum, getting some real good quotes about the upcoming season. So got Jeff on the line to talk about his interview with Tatum, his takeaways, what he's thinking about the Celtics as a whole for the upcoming season. So, let's just get right into it. Here's my chat with Jeff Goodman. All right, Jeff, I was telling you before we hopped on here, it's been really quiet, maybe one of the quietest summers in Celtics history, because usually they have like the Kyrie trade in August or like re-signing players, extensions of Rob, stuff like that. I needed a little something to give it this offseason some juice, and you, like a magical unicorn, deliver this interview with Jayson Tatum. So I just want to start big picture. I don't know if you want to tell me how it came. You can tell me about like how it came together, or what the biggest thing that stood out to you. Like, tell me about the process.
Well, I just started a new gig at The Messenger, so I wanted to come out swinging with a big name at least. So I figured, what bigger name nationally than Jayson Tatum? I'm going to be covering kind of like I've done, but probably even a little more NBA than I have, mostly college, NBA, high school, whatever, like whoever, whatever. That's the beauty of this gig. Still be doing some of my other stuff TV wise, but, I've known Jayson, since 2014 was the first time I saw him. And it was at LeBron camp right before LeBron decided. I was watching games during the day, these high school kids, and then literally tailing LeBron as much. It was like me, Ramona Shelbourne, and I forget who else. We were in charge of like tailing LeBron after, because he was going to make his decision, which ultimately led him back to Cleveland at that point. So I remember seeing this kid, and I was just blown away. And I've followed recruiting for 20 years. I was blown away by this kid who just knew how to play. And as it turns out, it was Jayson Tatum. Like, he had great feel for the game. He was super mature. He wasn't rattled. Kind of some of the things you still see today at a higher level. So I reached out to him, again, known him a long time, almost 10 years. And it's cool. Like, I interviewed him on air at ESPN in high school. I interviewed him on air at ESPN at Duke. I interviewed him on air at ESPN with the Celtics. So, like, it's just kind of cool to see the progression of Jayson Tatum as a player and as a person, even more, to be honest.
For sure.
Because I think I've said it to you even after some of the press conferences lately. Like, it's cool to just see the maturity of a lot of these kids. But especially Jayson, who was so quiet, and he'll say that, like, he still is, but he was super quiet, didn't say a word early on, when he certainly in high school and even at Duke, and more so, I think, when he got to Boston.
For sure.
You guys would tell me, like, he's the most boring interview ever. I don't know if it's you specifically, but as a group,
I probably use those words. Like, he wouldn't elaborate, and he's gotten so much better the past like year or two. And I think I tell people all the time, that's part of the superstar development, is understanding, like, we're going to come to you and ask you about things that are outside your, basic day to day, and you need to have an answer. LeBron is the best at it. Like, he knows how to like put and I don't even want to say positive spin, but he knows how to give a intellectual answer about something. I think Jayson is growing into that, and you can see it especially reflected in your article.
Yeah. And again, some of the stuff that didn't make the story, I thought was fascinating, because I did a podcast with him during the pandemic, and he said to me how embarrassed he was to tell people from the Celtics organization that he was going to be a father. And he waited till the very, very end before he told a lot of people in the organization, high up people. And he talked about, he was like, I never thought I would be the guy to have such a public relationship with my son, because I was, he's quiet again, but what he said was, honestly, it's on Deuce. Deuce is so outgoing that it almost kind of happened naturally. He didn't push it out there. That's not Jayson. You know that. So I just thought overall we hit on so many different topics. I kind of wish I had another hour with him to go deeper on some of them, that was the one thing I felt like when I hung up the phone with him after about an hour. I was like, damn, like I should have went deeper on some of these other things, but I wanted to get to so many different topics that you just felt like you couldn't get as much depth as I wanted on some of these things.
Yeah, it's the curse of our business is that I was joking before we jumped on. It's like sometimes you're left with 5 minutes with a player or 10 minutes with a player. That you got that much time is awesome. When you hang up that phone, what's the first thing that you said, like, wow, that really jumped out to me that he said?
I think it was more that he said the last couple of years how he's kind of grown comfortable in Boston. To me, that resonated with me. Like he kind of admitting like it was really tough for the first 3 or 4 years. And I'm from here. So for me, I can't really comprehend what it's like going from being a Midwest guy, from St. Louis to Boston. But thinking about it, yeah, it's a major culture change, especially for a 19-year-old kid who, oh, by the way, like I remember draft night because I did the draft for ESPN. And I remember talking to him and his mom, Brandy. They were both she was really coming up to me. Is he going to be traded? Is he going to be traded? So it like started, remember the Jimmy Butler stuff started right away. So like, I think he's really now embraced the city and the fans, even though, again, there was some rough times here. And some fans still aren't all in on Jayson Tatum being a guy that's going to lead him to the promised land. But I think for the most part, he feels loved now, and he's more comfortable in his own skin to be able to take the criticism that maybe he had a harder time taking, a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's funny. What rewinds in my mind is us going with Markelle Fultz to the Garden as we took a lot of pictures that day, and for essentially I think we were pretty hell bent that he was going to be the number 1 pick. You knew more about Tatum than I did in that moment, and it is crazy to see how he's sort of blossomed. But it does make like that's the one thing I keep playing is like the what if game, like how things could have been so different. But I think you bring up a good point. So I think Celtics fans have obviously loved Jayson Tatum. He doesn't get as much criticism as maybe Jaylen Brown, some of the others that, the superstar types. But, there's always been this desire for him to express his love for Boston because that's what we want. We want our superstars to say, like, I'm one of you now. I'm a masshole, and this is what I do. And in your article, it really came through just how much he appreciates now what he's got. And sometimes it just takes some time for that. But I love that he framed it again in the context of Deuce. He's been here, but it used to be just a place he came to play basketball. Now it's his son, his whole life is here.
Yes.
And you start to develop that attachment. I think every parent who, regardless, like when you move or you're in a new city or new town or whatever, like you develop that. But I mean, it's cool to hear that coming out because he has tried so hard to give back to the community of St. Louis. And I think he's starting to find his way of how to do that here.
Yeah. And he's just a private person.
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing with Jayson Tatum that's a lot different than a lot of. I mean, I've known a lot of these kids how they've grown up, and Jimmy Butler wants attention, right? Like we know that Jimmy Butler likes attention.
What?
Jayson Tatum does not like attention. He's the opposite of Jimmy Butler in a lot of ways, right? Jimmy's gonna show his emotions on his sleeve. Tatum said to me because I asked him, I said, without Marcus Smart, like I'm worried about the lack of emotion up and down the roster, outward emotion on this team. You guys are all pretty cool, right? You're all pretty cool dudes who don't show a lot of emotion. Are you worried about it? He said, no, I'm really not. He said, what people, I'm not going to be Kevin Garnett. We know that. But he said, like, the things people don't see are, in film sessions, things of that nature, in practice. When, he's not going to MF his teammates. That's not his personality again. But I think he's much more comfortable with his own voice now. And I do think when Jayson Tatum talks now, people are going to listen because he's not one of those guys who's going to talk just to talk. So when he does, I think everybody's going to understand, okay, you know what? This dude's got a real issue, or he's got something to say that he feels really passionately or strongly about.
And I think it's spot on. Like, we kept hearing rumblings last year that he had been more vocal, that he was willing to speak up in the locker room. And much like with the media side of it, it just feels like you have to get to a point where you're comfortable with that. And I don't think Marcus prohibited that. It's just Marcus wasn't going to wait. Marcus, whether Jayson was complaining or saying something or not, was going to be that guy that spoke up. And I do think, they got to figure out that void. And I'm eager to see how Jayson and
I don't know
Jalen
who it's
handle
going
them.
to be, Chris. Like, I don't know who it can be. Like, I just, there's not a personality that's going to all of a sudden flip the switch. We know that. Like, Jalen is the one that a lot of people would think has it in him because he's so vocal off the court, right?
Right.
But we see it on the court. That's not how he is on the court for the most part. So your two superstars are pretty chill on the court for the most part. Porzingis isn't going to come in and do it. We know Brogdon and Derek White aren't going to be the rah-rah guys. Derek White's got a little bit of rah-rah in him, but in a very different way. So who's left? I mean, honestly, who is left? You got rid of Grant, who again talked too much, but he talked. He was vocal. He brought passion, outward energy. I think Jayson will be a little bit better. Like, even we saw it in the playoffs last year, and I remember talking to him after it when he got the technical for hanging on the rim right away.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love that. Like, I love that. Personally, that's how I want to see you get your technicals. I don't want to see you get your T's bitching and moaning at the refs.
So true.
And I think he's gotten better with the refs. We talked about that too. It didn't make it in the story, but we talked about that. And he said, listen, now I think I understand how hard their job is. I don't think he ever really thought of it from that perspective before, but he had a great comment. He said, listen, I get it now that no matter what they do, they're going to be booed by somebody. No matter what call they make, they are booed by somebody. He said, I watch a lot of high school. I watch a lot of college. We have the best officials in the world, but I'm passionate. I get upset because I said, I'm like, give me another example when you show emotion like that. Because that's the only time I ever see him, Chris, lose his shit.
Right.
Is on the officials. And he said to me, he's like, that's it. That's it. Like, you don't ever see him get too high or too low on anything else other than with the officials.
And look, he's got to corral that. I think the only gripe that Celtics fans have is that there's way too many times when you're looking on a fast break going the other way and he's still yapping at an official. I think, just like you said, I think as you get older and into this league, you get more cognizant. Paul Pierce used to tell the story about learning all the officials' names, and you go up and, shake their hands before the game and play the little game within the game and get on their good side and remember a family member or something. I think
he's learned most of the names. We talked.
All right. Well, there he goes. And even if it's just because he's been cursing them and saying, like, how come, you didn't give me that call and everything. One of the other things that I thought was really that jumped out to me was the all defense stuff. He's clearly had that potential. He's got the crazy length. When he is engaged. Now, sometimes offensive players tend to put so much emphasis on that side of the ball. I wonder, but did it come through in that conversation just how much that matters to him? The way the quote seemed to suggest he wanted to get to that level.
Yeah, I think he understands that he has a potential to be an all defensive guy. I've said this over and over, and man, you don't know how much shit I get for this, but when I said I think he's the most complete player in the NBA, and people kill me. Like, people in my family kill me, my nephews. They're like, well, Jokic this, Jokic. I get it. Like, Jokic is a better player right now. I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is Jayson Tatum has the fewest amount of weaknesses in his game of anybody in the NBA. When you look at the overall, everything he does, there's no, I mean, again, unless you want to, use, again, what he does with the officials, but that's,
right. But everyone has something.
I'm talking about physical abilities. I mean, he's a terrific scorer at all three levels. He's a terrific passer now. He always had that in. And now he makes people better consistently. Makes really good decisions with the basketball. Rebounds, can handle it, can go left, can go right, and can be a really good defensive player, right? Like, on and off the ball, has the ability to be a very, very good defensive player. So yeah, that was the one area that he said, along with working on shooting the threes off the move. Those were kind of the two areas that he said he was focused on this offseason.
Yeah, and it's encouraging to hear. You just want your superstar to never be complacent, to sort of have those goals, and especially, I mean, everything we talk about here is with the hovering of no more Marcus Smart. Like, it's one thing to not be a great defender when you've got Rob and Marcus and all these guys around you. It's another when that area is going to be a little bit more diminished this year. You can't count. How many years can Al do this at 37? Like, if is Rob going to stay healthy? Which I'll even throw out there before you throw it
You
at
beat
me.
me to it, man.
I'm telling you, he had a great summer. I can't wait. That's a whole nother podcast.
I hope he was just, hey, listen, I hope Rob, all he did all summer was like lie on the beach. Just lie on the beach. Don't even get up. Like, have somebody literally put everything for you. Your chair, open your chair. Like, Rob shouldn't even be opening his chair because he could hurt his finger. You get your finger caught in the chair, the beach chair. Like, no, you should be doing that for him. Actually,
I've honestly I've had a lot of time recently, so I feel like I've let him down in some way by not being there to at least ensure that he is full go for the start of the season. One other thing on Jayson, I thought it was interesting that he made it a point to say he wants to be on the Mount Rushmore. Yeah. First off, what is your Mount Rushmore? He included Pierce on there. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
and
not on mine.
Yeah, like, it's weird. It's probably generational too. If you were, I mean, I think we're around the same age, and I think we grew up with, like, it's a hard Mount Rushmore to get on because you got Russell and you start there, and it's hard to put three others next to Russell, but you start doing it, and
well, you have to go Russell and Larry. Like, those are like the not you can't even
non-negotiable
anybody on those two.
And then it gets a little bit more tricky. So maybe it's network bias, but for me, if you're going with just on-court stuff, you're not going to put Tommy on there. But if you put the totality of what they meant to the organization and, like, every different facet, it's hard for me to leave off Tommy. I'm a Worcester guy, so I'm always irrationally skewed towards Kuzi. I don't know if I'd put him on there, but he's in that conversation. And then just, like, I mean, the Havliceks and I mean, there's just so many different ways you can go. Does Tatum, I guess if we could fast forward to Celtics Talk Podcast in 2043, is he on there?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said,
which on its own is like a crazy thing to say.
Yeah, I just think he's better than Paul Pierce, and he's got to win a title, I guess. But all I'll say is, like, Paul Pierce wasn't winning that title without KG and Ray, right? We know that.
And yet, I'll put this, like, the totality of Pierce's, like, being a Celtic for what was essentially most of his career, besides the Brooklyn and Washington stuff, revitalizing it, considering where the depths that we had gone to. Like, I'll always have a soft spot for Pierce. And that makes me wonder if there's a generation just maybe slightly, younger than me that appreciates this a little bit more, because if I was fortunate enough to catch the very tail end of the big three, like, I can at least remember watching a TV at 5-6 years old and being like, oh, this team is really good. And I like Danny Ainge and, like, whatever else I was thinking.
I'm older than you, Chris. I'm a little bit older than you. So I would have McHale on there today. I would have Havlicek and McHale. That would be my four would be Russell, Bird, Havlicek, and McHale. But I think Jayson Tatum eventually, and I remember saying it before he ever played a game, I said, Jayson Tatum's going to be a Hall of Famer, and he's going to be better than Paul Pierce before he ever played one game.
And to bring this conversation full circle, like, I love that he admitted, like, he has to win a title.
Yes.
It's like, it sort of hovers over everything. You can't be a Celtic legend and even have just one. And that's why I know, like, it sounds so, I hate to hold it against Pierce because they should have had another one. 2010 should have been a title year. But, like, you need to have probably multiple rings to be in that conversation, because there's just been too many good players over the totality, and Tatum gets that.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, I don't know if he got it, 2 or 3 years ago, but it was hard to get it, like 2 years ago, man. I mean, again, where he was, where the franchise was, where the core of this team was 2 years ago today, and where it is now is vastly different. And again, he talked about the expectations and the criticism and saying, like, I get it now. Like, I get it, and I understand it. They criticize KD. They criticize everybody in this league, no matter what they've done. I think he sees that and now doesn't take it nearly as personally as he did a couple years ago.
how are you feeling about the Celtics here as we crawl towards the start of training camp and having gotten the State of the Union from the primary guy?
What I'll say is, again, this is funny. Like 6 years ago, I remember walking out of a hotel in New York City, and I could barely walk. All of a sudden, it just started hurting. I had plantar fasciitis, and I had it for 8 months, Chris. Literally 8 months. Now, I didn't get the treatment that our boy Porzingis is getting right now,
Sure.
and he's younger and certainly more athletic than I am. But that you just don't know. That, I guess that's my biggest takeaway from having it is you don't know when it's going to go away. So for them to put a timetable on plantar fasciitis, I think is really hard to do because it could still bother him well beyond. And he may be good today, for all I know. He may be fine. It's not bothering him at all today, and he's good to go. Or it could still linger, and then it's a pain tolerance thing as much as anything else. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about that. I've been told Brogdon's been working out down in Atlanta for months, like since basically the week after the draft and all that happened with the Clippers. I think he's fine. I think there's the bigger question with Malcolm Brogdon is long-term from what I'm told, than short-term, that he's fine. He'll be good. I'm excited to see this team with a guy, if Porzingis gets healthy, which he will at some point, with a guy that fits this system a lot better than Smart offensively. But I'm concerned, obviously, about the defensive end and the lack of, again, what I talked to him about. My question is just that lack of, like, they could look like a dead team. I mean, they could look like a dead team at times anyway with Smart. And now you take away Smart and Grant Williams, and there may not be a lot of intensity, which people in this city need. They need that. They need to see that this team is all in and showing some emotions on their sleeve. And again, that's going to be hard if this team doesn't win at the highest level. People are going to kill them for that, because if you win and you're in first place, all right, nobody's going to say anything. Who cares? Who cares if you're yelling, screaming, chest bumping, any of that shit? But the moment you start losing, they're going to come at them with, like, well, where is the passion with this group? Like, they don't even look like they, you hear it with Jayson, right? Like, he doesn't even look like he cares about winning. And it's like, of course he cares about winning. That's just, I think how some of these kids, again, in this generation, grew up like trying to be a little too cool instead of, showing the emotions. There just aren't many of those guys out there that are showing that emotion and wear it on their sleeve. I'm trying to think of, like, who are the guys right now? Who are the guys in the NBA that just, like, let loose and don't care at all? There aren't that many.
What you mentioned, Jimmy, like there's like, there's guys that wear it, and sometimes they wear it to be seen, but like, I agree. It's there's not a lot of KGs left, and you don't have to be that. There's plenty of examples of guys that win without showing it, but I am eager. Like, the one thing that doesn't matter what Jayson says, like, we got to see how the sort of the next evolution of leadership and, understanding that they can't have the lapses that they've had. That's the one thing that I'm with you. Like, the talent is undeniable.
Yes.
And like, I love Smart. But like, if you want to tell me if Porzingis is healthy, which I actually think, I'll keep screaming this. There is like zero concern from what I can tell about that injury. And then
long term, there'll be none. Yeah, he'll be fine at some point. Is he fine day one in training camp? Is he fine day one in the regular? Like, whatever it is, it's just going to be up to him. And if I'm them, it's like, I'm just taking it slow because there's no reason to rush him. Why?
The one thing I would love to see from this team is the eliminating the random Tuesday night against a bad team where, like, Orlando just comes in and thumps them. And I know that happens on occasion, but when it happens like 5 times a year and it matters in the standings, and like, those are the things that drive people nuts, and then for it to crop up in random instances in the playoffs, like Game 7, how are you that flat? Like, how is that even possible after the way Derek White saved your season and off you go? And, those are the things that drive people mad. And I do think that just comes down to sort of and I don't want to even say it's the way they approach the game. It's just there's something about the mentality that has to change. And maybe just because you've changed a little bit of the DNA of the locker room, that will come through. Maybe Joe being more comfortable and having the experience coaches around him.
Like you said, Smart dominated a little bit in that realm, right? So like these other guys didn't feel like they needed to do it because they had Smart. Maybe they're going to feel like, hey, you know what? I got to be a little bit more assertive. My voice being heard. Maybe, I mean, again, maybe they all take a little bit of a step in that regard. Like, again, I don't know if I ever see Malcolm Brogdon, yelling and screaming. Like that dude just is like this, right?
Yeah,
like,
and you think about it, like Al, like
yes.
Rob can get loud, but I don't think
Al got there though. In the playoffs, I was actually really impressed. Al had his moments where he showed way more emotion than I've ever seen out of him.
Well, he knows the timeline is only so long right now.
That's
and like I think him more than anybody, probably early in the season, as we wait to see like how that blossoms, he's got to be vocal. He's got to be the one being like, look,
this is it.
He gets it. Like it's nice that Tatum and Brown have, it might not work out again this year. And I think the pressure is really going to start to be felt if it doesn't. And yet they'll still have 10 years of their career to figure it out. Al's like, come on, man. I need to get one and go on. Look, and Gorman, like they got to get one for Gorman before he goes out the door. So I am just in all facets. This feels like I know that every year comes with expectations, but that's the one thing I've been feeling as it gets a little bit closer is they kind of got to get one. And
there's no excuses right now. Now, again, there may be some with injuries or whatever. Now, we probably said that a year ago today, and then the excuse happened with Ime and
sure.
Rob getting hurt to start the year. There were a bunch of things, Tatum getting hurt in game 7. There are a bunch of things, but for the most part, you look at it today and you're like, all right, you know what? As long as Porzingis and Brogdon are healthy, when it matters here, Joe's got a year under his belt. And you wonder too, how much that Smart trade was also because of the fact that, and I still can't believe this, like when, I don't remember when it was, you'll remember better than me, but when Smart called out Joe publicly.
Yeah. Like I mean, there was a couple instances, and I honestly,
that was high level of like, you can't do that publicly, what he did to Joe. You could, like, to me, I almost felt like that was it. When he said that, I almost felt like, you know what? You can't come back from that thing. You can't come back. And if you're going to keep Joe, one of them's got to go almost.
And it's interesting because I thought they had like a really good relationship. They would do the little different fighting combats and stuff like that. And I think Joe appreciated what Marcus brought defensive wise and obviously setting a tone there. I wonder, Marcus we keep talking about it. He's the one guy who's sort of unfiltered who, would go up there. And I don't know what the right and wrong way is. When Ime was telling everybody what they were doing wrong, I was sitting there thinking, man, this guy's going to burn through this place quickly because you can't do that. And then it actually brought the best basketball out of them. And so everybody does a little bit differently. I do think you're right. Like in terms of a player has to be careful, especially with a coach and a first year coach. And, Marcus probably could have voiced some of those things better. I don't know if it ultimately spelled it. I think we knew because we got to the offseason. I kept telling people, I don't know if there's going to be really big changes. Like it's hard based on, especially with the new rules.
No, but you said it. You said a guard was gone. You said it was going to be Brogdon or Smart. You were like, one of them's gone.
Mm-hmm. And you knew, but the way that all came together was, and you can look at it from a Celtics perspective. I mean, to get Porzingis and a first round pick, like you had to do the trade, right? Like, we all worried about like how Marcus would age based on the way he plays and all that. That all being said, if you could have done that, if you could have got Porzingis and not moved Marcus Smart, you would have given it every consideration in the world. And clearly they were trying to do the Porzingis part of it with Brogdon. But I do wonder if Smart would have been here end of the day, no matter what, as jarring as that is to still sort of process. I just eager to see how it plays out. And I think it's, maybe it'll be a win-win for everybody. Maybe the Celtics will just have a different level of dynamic with Porzingis out there and just sort of no lulls in the offense, and they got to figure it out defensively, but they still have that talent. And Marcus should be really good for Memphis. Shoot threes.
I'd rather at the end of the game,
when
the ball moves and somebody's wide open, and it won't be Porzingis shooting three.
And that's the one thing I keep telling people is like Marcus shot it better than everyone. You would have thought Marcus was a 28% shooter based on the way people reacted. And yet like all those open looks going to Porzingis now is a really intriguing possibility. The idea of like how open
they may go to Jalen from three again, and he might go back to shooting 38% from three because he's wide open because they got to press up, or it may help him being able to actually put the ball on the floor and get to the basket in the half court, right? Like,
Yeah.
who knows? But it's going to help offensively. And let's be honest, Marcus wasn't great defensively last year. He wasn't. He was good. He wasn't what we expected from Marcus Smart.
Fair. And I mean, that was accentuated by the fact that Derek White emerged as the defensive guy. And, that's
That
why
I want to see, Chris. I want to see Derek White as your 30 a minute a game point guard next year. I want to see it.
I only screamed it all last season. So we'll see if and that's the thing. Like, there's going to be a balance, and good luck, Joe. Like, he's going to want to play guys a lot, but I also want to see a little bit of a balance here. We'll see if some of these depth pieces can help out. And ultimately, and to really bring this conversation full circle, all that matters is Jayson Tatum an MVP level player? And, does Jaylen Brown play to the same level that he did for much of last season? Those will be the two things that ultimately dictate where this team goes and how far it is. And so Jayson Tatum at least saying all the right things on the ramp up.
I think he means them. I do. I'll say
sure.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think it's just, some guys, they just tell you what they think you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I'll tell you about Jayson, like, he's very smart and thoughtful. And he's not going to say anything flammable. That's just not him, right? He's not a lightning rod, but he's also not going to just be vanilla for this. Like, he's not thinking before he speaks to say, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Like, that's not him either, especially with me, because I've known him so long. It's really a conversation more than anything with the two of us. And there was nothing that he was like later on. He was like, no, I don't want that out there, anything like that. He was like, whatever I said, I'm good with.
Nice. Let's end on this. How long until you go to a Deuce Tatum game, since you cover all levels of basketball now? Like, what age should we start wondering if he's going to be an NBA player?
So I went to Tatum's camp last summer. My daughter and I were at Patriots training camp, and I didn't even know Tatum's camp was going on, little kids camp, right? So I shot over there, and Deuce ended up jumping in with some older kids. And Jayson was cracking up because at that point he literally couldn't dribble. Like, he was grabbing the ball and running with the ball. And I thought it was cute just to see Jayson. Like, some dads might have been embarrassed and been like yelling at Jayson was just cracking up. And, another thing he said to me within the story about Deuce was, and I said, trust me, I know this. He said, yeah, I'll go out there and I'll give him advice and try to help him and tell him something. And he's like, basically wants no part of it from dad. Doesn't want to take any advice. And Jason's like, I'm one of the better players in the NBA and my son won't listen to me. And I'm like, trust me, like
it only gets
whoever
worse.
you are as a parent, like, that's just, so I said, I'm like, you got to get somebody else on the team to get with Deuce. That's your best bet here, is get somebody else. He'll listen to somebody else. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Deuce is so cute. And again, probably my favorite thing of watching Jayson Tatum grow up has been fatherhood for Jayson Tatum and watching him mature off the court. Those are the coolest part. I think you would agree, watching some of these guys, even for you, probably coming in with Tatum as a rookie and seeing him and being around him and watching him grow up to where, again, now, and I asked Jayson this, I said, do you get a lot of pushback on having Deuce like out there too much, like national anthem next to you? And he said, no, it probably happens on Twitter. He's like, I don't really pay attention to it at all. I love it personally, just again, I'm the father of a soon to be 20-year-old girl who I want to spend as much time, every moment she wants to spend with me, I want to spend with her. So I told him, like, it goes kind of quick, this, it goes kind of quick, and he's taking advantage of the time. And that's to me the coolest part of watching him be a father, is he is absolutely taking advantage of the time he's got at a young age with his son.
We're a bunch of old softies now. I think 10 years ago we would have been like, get this kid off the court. Like, we're playing back. Now we kind of get it. And it is neat because it would be very easy for a superstar to be singularly focused on, like, hey, he's one of the 5 best players in the NBA. He should be an MVP someday. You know, there's a lot of glitz and glamour that comes with it, but it is neat that, you know, making sure Deuce is out there dribbling. I think Deuce as much as anyone. I know some of their public scuffles will might deter from what I'm about to say, but he'll miss Grant Williams, because Grant was also good about mixing it up with Deuce in the corner before games.
And they were next to each other, right? Still in the locker room.
Yeah.
Grant,
Then
I actually think Grant, right, and Jayson, it was good for Jayson to have Grant, because Grant, again, like we talked about, wouldn't shut up. So there was kind of a banter there between the two of them in the locker room that people didn't see, that got Jayson a little bit out of his shell and probably a little bit more vocal, comfortable, screwing around, having fun in the locker room, where maybe that wouldn't have been him if he wasn't next to a guy like Grant.
It's interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see how he responds this year with all the new sort of wrinkles. People, I mean, I remember talking to Grant last year, and he was telling me, like, when he came for his pre-draft visit with the Celtics, he actually spent time at Tatum's house, you know, lived there while he was going through it. Or maybe the first part of his, you know, after signing, like, it was like, you know, there was a friendship there and a bond. And yeah, everyone got sick of Grant running his mouth at times, but just like you said, you need that voice, you need that sort of levity sometimes in the locker room. A lot of little question marks for the Celtics. What's undeniable is the talent. Jeff Goodman, nice job. What a way to launch this new website. And you know, thank you for giving me something to talk about in
what I did it. That's why I did it, Chris. I knew you needed something to do. You know, I knew your wife probably wanted to get your way, you know, for at least 45 minutes today. So, you know, she can thank me later.
Mission accomplished. All right, Jeff Goodman, thank you so much for your time.
You got it. Thanks, Chris.
All right. We get the superstar of the team talking. So it must mean the season's slowly crawling here. Still got like 25 days or so before we get them together for media day and the start of training camp. But as players start trickling back to Boston, hopefully have more to talk about here on the Celtics Talk Podcast. While you're waiting, go like, subscribe, check us out on the YouTube page. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk Podcast.